Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osteopathic Lyceum podcast. We have Heidi Stewart-Petersen. For those who can see this, they will see that there is another name on there. There's technological issues on both of our parts. We would change that, but we're not going to. So we have Heidi on because what we want to do is talk about, obviously, Heidi's background to some degree, but we want to talk about the realities of owning a multidisciplinary clinic and see if we can help flesh out a framework for people to understand what that's like, what that feels like, if they're interested in it, if it's worth them pursuing, or if they should consider some other avenues. So with all that intro said, give me a little bit of your background. So I know, well, okay, here, I'm going to sort of goose the conversation by asking you specific questions. Like I could just give you this broad thing and say, tell me about yourself. It's like, well, what do you want me to tell you? So you are an RMT by trade, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how long have you been in RMT?
23 years.
23 years. Now, what got you interested in becoming an RMT to start?
I would have to say my chiropractor
Nice.
at the age of 8 years old, trying to convince me to grow up to become a chiropractor.
Okay.
And then if we fast forward to university, did a year at Western, took kinesiology, and that's where we studied all the different manual therapy professions. And as I sat in a classroom of 1,200 people studying the smaller classroom settings in colleges and private schools, when we studied registered massage, I could see myself there. So
Okay.
that's where I was the following year.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The Western has a lecture hall that holds 1,200 people?
It did for the kin. Yeah.
Really?
Kinesiology.
Because when I was at York, the lecture halls were essentially 400 people, and you would have in first year so there were two mandatory first year courses that for some reason at York they decided should happen at 8 a.m. And they both happened at the same time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But what would happen is you'd kind of flip through them. So it was like all 800 first year kin students were there, but they were in separate lecture halls. So when you said 1,200, I'm like, wow, you guys have a lecture hall that big?
Massive.
Yeah.
Space.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting task for a professor to hold the attention of that many people, even momentarily. Somebody's got to be screwing around in there.
It definitely had a theater feel.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
where
bigger. That's considerably bigger than a large theater.
Right.
Like like a vaudeville theater wouldn't be that big. So yeah, that must have been interesting. And I can see why that would, if you weren't vibing with that, if that didn't feel nice, why RMT, because they exposed you to it, would become interesting. I'm also impressed that they were helping you assay other professions. That's actually pretty cool.
We definitely studied a little bit into as many manual therapies as they were aware of at the time. And
okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Where did you end up doing your massage therapy training?
It was the Alexandrian Institute in downtown Hamilton.
Okay.
No longer there.
I was about to say that doesn't sound like I know it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. But okay.
It's not there now. I think maybe there's a Career Canada college,
sure,
possibly there now.
Yeah, well, just utilizing a functional space, if that's fair. Okay. Now you've been an RMT for 23 years, as you said. Have you been? Because I know that you own a multidisciplinary clinic, or you co-own a multidisciplinary clinic, is probably the more respectful way to say it, because you do have a business partner. But through those 23 years, have you been consistently massaging, say, a full schedule? Was there a time when you had a relatively full schedule and then transitioned into maybe a different form of how much you work hands-on?
Yes, when I began, I would say I was steady within a year, which was wonderful.
Oh yeah.
And I was probably seeing about 30 to 35 clients a week.
Okay.
As time went on, got married, had children. After each child, came back and did offered less client hours.
Sure. Okay.
Each time. Yeah.
Now, when you started, did you start on your own? Did you start in somebody else's clinic?
I started with that chiropractor that pushed me
Oh,
towards.
nice.
I started as a tenant from
Okay.
him here in Brantford.
So
Yeah,
at the time, just when you say tenant, that means that you had a flat rate rent
that's
for
right.
the month, and then you hustled to make whatever you could above and beyond rent.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah. I'm gonna guess that room rental in Brantford at the time was different than what it would be now.
Yes, we're going back to 2001,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess, in 2002.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, yeah, probably somewhere in the 300 a month mark or
Oh,
250 a month, like really low.
yeah. 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 But that was your room.
Just my room. Yeah.
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 When I, in 2011, the first room that I rented as a flat rate was $900. And it was my room 24/7. I
Yeah.
couldn't access the building that it was in 24/7, but anytime the building was open, because it was in a condo office building. So the naturopathic doctor who owned the condo, like they gave me access as long as the building was open. So that was
Yes.
actually nice. But yeah, that so 2002 to 2011, a room rate goes, at least it was in Richmond Hill, so it was a different area just outside of Toronto, or the north end of Toronto. So you understand that some jurisdictions will just have different rates
Yes.
for rent, but within a 10-year period, it went way up. I, you might have some insight into this just because owning the clinic, you'll talk to different people and you'll hear different things. And as people approach your clinic to work with you, they'll have different ideas. But do you have the sense that there are any $1,000 a month rooms left?
I think the last one I heard of was 1,300, and and that's in Brantford here, so we can't
Yep.
say wouldn't be a Toronto price, I'm
No.
sure. But
No. Okay. Fair
yeah.
enough. Yeah.
hmm
Okay. So you worked within the Chiro's office as a tenant. How long did you do that for?
I was there for, I think, 3 years. Right.
Okay. And as you said, within a year you had a steady schedule. So that was a good starting spot for you. Is that fair?
A great start.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then what was your next step? So you said 3 years, then what did you do?
So actually the rent went up. And
Yeah.
so I had purchased a home on my own.
Oh,
And I did have a meeting with my
mhm.
landlord, the chiropractor, and tried to see if I could sublet because that's sometimes an option.
Yeah.
So I could, because the rent went up to a whopping $500, but for
Yeah.
me at the time, uh, and of course they weren't willing, so I ended up moving my practice into my home.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did that for a year,
Okay.
and that has its pros and cons.
Yeah. Yeah. So you say it has its pros and cons, and this is just because we're touching on it, because I didn't know that you ever did that.
Sure.
What would you list as meaningful, not necessarily every pro and con, but meaningful pros and meaningful cons?
So say there's inclement weather, say the weather isn't good, if your clients are willing,
Hmm.
of course,
Hmm.
if you're open and you're
Yeah.
there, they can still come to you. You don't have to drive to your clinic. So that's nice. Yeah. What else? A con would be everyday things like pets, children, having to keep your house clean. Think not everybody does that, right? So that that level of professionalism, what does the client see when they walk in the door,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And their
So
level of comfort. Yeah.
for sure. The Was there any point so at the time you said you purchased the home on your own. Was anybody living with you?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. How did you feel with respect to safety?
So I was now that I had an established clientele,
Yeah.
it would be just clients who I knew coming in the
Yes.
door.
Okay.
Eventually, getting married in that, then I was more comfortable if my
Hmm.
husband was home to have brand new clients coming
Okay.
in,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's a concern for sure.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that's the reason. That's why I asked, because obviously different people have different preferences and different sensitivities.
hmm
So you've made choices. You said, if I know you, you can come. If I don't know you, I'm not talking.
That's right.
Fair enough. And then under different circumstances, when there was at least another person. Now, the fact that it's your husband, he probably provides you with a general sense of safety, which is why you have a long-term relationship
Right.
with this person. But would it be fair if I asked you, if, say, we make a completely anonymous person with no specific characteristics, if there was another person in the building with you, would you have still felt comfortable, or are there some characteristics that you would prefer to have in whoever that person is for that sense of safety?
I think as long as there's another individual who is aware of the business going on,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that there are people from the public coming in and out.
Yeah. So essentially no discrimination on characteristics, just another person.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. That's and the reason I try to ask it in somewhat of an abstract way is because you can easily run into conversations where people will provide descriptions of who they want there for safety. That's, like they might give you size and shape kind of
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
descriptions,
Sure.
and gender descriptions. They very well may
Sure.
have preferences. But at least under the circumstances, you as an individual would say, yeah, as long as somebody else is there and they know what's up, I feel safer. Right? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that for a year. What was the next move?
The next move was another rental, like going into a rental location. Essentially, we'll just call it a dump that needed some TLC.
Yeah.
However, we did fix that up,
Okay.
and I'd say within about a year's time, it was just down the street from my home.
Okay.
Within a year's time, I was able to sublet out 2 other rooms that we built within the small little place.
Okay.
So I think I was now subletting to 2 RMTs and a reflexologist and an esthetician, all in
Okay.
this tiny little three
Yep.
room clinic.
Oh, well, as long as you can run the schedule, it's fine. So when you say was it you and a business partner that found the space?
No, just I found it and then put my husband and my father-in-law to work being the construction folk.
Okay. Okay. And that's why I ask, because
Yeah.
when you say we, I just want to have some idea of who the we
This
is.
still myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So relatively early on, you were showing some motivation and entrepreneurial preference. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did that seem to be a characteristic that showed up early on in life, like even prior to this, or was that something that you identified once you got into working?
I think summer job of age 19, working for the city of Brantford and punching a time clock,
Right.
reassured my thinking that I don't want to do this. Not that it
Okay.
was nothing wrong with that work, wasn't
No.
for me. Yeah,
No.
wasn't for me.
Okay. So
I
it
think
was you were motivated away from something more than you were motivated towards something.
yes, and just the thought of having control of my own schedule was very enticing.
Okay, good. Okay, so now you have 3 rooms running, people managing a schedule, you're subletting, so you chose whatever chunk of or whatever percentage of your total rent for the space, and then you chunked it up between these people, and maybe you made a tiny bit extra on the top, or you got it kind of level where your expenses were covered, and whatever you made was yours.
I think that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that a little bit more as a concept, because it's like, listen, once the expenses are paid, nobody else has to suffer.
That's right.
It's not
Yeah.
that there's a way to look at it where it's the going rate for a room. It's like, my expenses are paid. I literally have no more overhead. It's gone.
Oh yeah, I just made up my own rates and they were very affordable
Yeah.
for others,
Yeah.
but it covered my costs. So
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, how long did you run that space for?
that space was from 2004 and it was the first Grand Wellness, which is the current company I own now.
Yep.
On the corner of Grand and St. George Street, here in Brantford. I was there from, I think, 2001 till 2004.
Okay. So you all right, there we go. I'm trying to put dates together just because of some of the stuff you said, but that's fine. So 01 to 04. Now 04 hits, and then what do you do?
You know what? I just realized I just messed that up. Sorry. I was
That's okay.
there from
It's
I
okay.
was there from 2004 to 2008.
Okay, there we go.
That'll make more sense to you when you go over this.
Yeah. That's okay. I have a friend who he's exceptionally bright. His memory's pretty good, but his ability to put a time on the memory
Right.
is absolutely terrible. Right.
Yeah.
I've told him this for years, to the point where now when he's talking to people, he says, I feel like this was 7 years ago.
That's
But
me.
my memory doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've, at least in that particular person, I've reminded him enough that he's like, no, I'm bad at this. So
Right.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So 08, You're at 08, you have three rooms running. Do you have more people subletting by that time, or is it because you now have something working very well and very steady that you decide to make it bigger?
Yes, we've come to a point where there's actually now 2 estheticians, whereas where before there was 1.
Yep.
There's still the 3 massage therapists and the foot reflexologist. And what's happening is I cannot build any more rooms, and there's no more parking. Parking's becoming an issue.
Okay.
And there's a clientele, there's a demand, right?
Okay.
One of my tenants is my now business partner.
Yep.
So she had a base similar to mine, graduating around the same time. So now we've got a hopping little hole in the wall place, and now we're looking for another clinic.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
So you find another clinic. Now, did the next clinic, did you again rent? Did you purchase a building?
Yeah. So I explained to this person what I was thinking. I wanted to expand the clinic, but I wanted to add in some spa-like services, multidisciplinary, going that way as well, not just spa services, but therapy. And she wanted to expand into just massage therapy. Anyways, long story short is we decided to partner, and we approached all the people who were there as tenants and said, would you like to come with us?
Yeah.
If you do, big changes, you'll have to become either an employee or a contractor. And everybody said yes and came with us. So we did purchase a building in a historical district here in Brantford. Okay.
And that process was straightforward enough, say, as far as buying it, renovating it to whatever you wanted it to be. I'm sure there was bumps on the road, but it wasn't a terrible thing, at least at the time, because we're talking 08.
That's right. It was a learning process. And some people may not realize that you can't always just go to the bank. I think we ended up going with private money to get the mortgage and that kind of thing. So with that, you have to pay a little more interest. But yeah, and I don't even remember now. I think possibly a set of parents had to co-sign for somebody, like all these baby steps to get there, right? So
well, I think, say, as far as a bank would be concerned and the risk on getting money back. So large banks, as far as I know, prefer, or they finance far more consumer purchases than they do small businesses. So it's actually there's a risk profile with that. So maybe, how do I say this? Large banks would prefer to finance a non-productive purchase versus a productive purchase. So the difference being that the small community bank would prefer to invest in a business. So the loan is so that the business will turn money over, right? Whereas the large bank is going to bet on the person who has a job and will extract a certain amount out of the economy over time. Right. So it actually makes some funny things happen at large banks versus small banks. Small banks actually really help economies. Like, the more small banks you have, the more small businesses you have, the more production of stuff you have. So I can at least to some degree understand why that was the way that you ended up going. In 2008, prices were not astronomically ridiculous. Right. So, okay. And how long did you run there? So I know that you said the current space that you're in, you're renting. So you obviously sold the building at some point. When was that?
We sold the building at the end of 2014.
Okay.
And we ended up, moving, everybody over. By the time we were complete again, it was 2016, and we had a full multidisciplinary clinic in the old cotton mill factory that we're in now.
Nice. Okay. So especially with the spa type services, a historical building like that ends up probably doing some nice stuff for ambiance.
Well, the wonderful thing is with the rustic sort of look of the place, that industrial rustic look, you can do anything, and the place just already has that ambience there, right? You don't have to hide pipes, you can go with it.
Okay. What was it?
Timeless environment.
What was it that motivated you to sell the building that you had purchased?
Owing people money.
Fair enough. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. No, there was discussion of keeping it, renting it out, that kind of thing. But if we sold it, we were debt free going in as, fresh
Yeah.
new start tenant, and just as tenants, not worrying about all these lovely things that have come with building ownership, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Which there's always something to do,
Absolutely.
maintenance or whatnot.
Yeah, you're on the hook for all the maintenance. If you're not necessarily in tune with maintaining a property, then owning a property is probably not that smart. If
Yeah,
you rent inside of somebody else's property, they're on the hook for making sure it's not broken.
that's right.
So there, and hopefully I mean, if you're in an old cotton mill, if you're in a building like that, it's more likely than not that the landlords are conscientious, right? Because they definitely wouldn't want the impression that they're not taking care of something like that. Whereas, a strip mall, maybe they're not as conscientious, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay. So you've moved on. Now, as you're going through this process of building a clinic in a small space, purchasing a building, selling that building, reestablishing in a new space where you still are you continuing because of that process and the being the head or the co-head of the business? Are you still kind of trimming your massage hours?
So yeah, I would say I'm 15 on average, 15 hours a week now,
Okay.
doing massage.
Uh-huh.
And then now that years have gone on, there is an actual owner's salary.
Okay.
So the beauty of that is, should I like to take a vacation,
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
that's the goal, is to have
Yeah.
that income without
Yeah.
being there, right? The company
Okay.
does run without either of us being there now,
Yeah. Hmm.
which was a massive goal,
Yeah. Okay.
right? That we've obtained.
Hmm.
And another positive of that is that with our massage therapy, even osteopathy, whatever it is that the manual therapist does, when you work by appointment, then you can pick and choose, within reason,
Hmm.
how many appointments you want to do. If we just talk about income, if you do need to improve that, there is a choice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
offer more hours or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So now at this point, how many rooms are you running?
So the place is 2 stories,
Oh.
and downstairs there are 6 treatment rooms,
Mhm.
and upstairs there are 9.
Okay. Now, each of these treatment rooms, are they generally multi-use or are they a little bit more tailored to particular types of services?
Most of the treatment rooms all have the same type of electric table,
Mhm.
which can be used by any manual
Yep.
therapist.
Okay.
The only rooms that wouldn't have that would be, because we do go into the spa services, would
Yes.
be your pedicures, your manicures.
Mhm.
Obviously those rooms don't have tables.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple other therapists that work in there that just need an actual chair,
Okay.
and a desk, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
most of the rooms are multi-purpose rooms.
Okay. And as a business owner, a setup like that allows you, should you be able to set it up properly with the people who present themselves to work with you, it's like any room can make money at any time, and we can swap people around if we have to.
Yes, and we do. We don't other than that room I mentioned for the manicures and pedicures,
Mhm.
everyone works in every room. So
Yes.
nobody's staying in one room all the time, right?
Okay. Now, the do you have more people working than you have rooms?
Oh yes.
Okay. And that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons that something like that can work, is
Yes.
because the rooms are always there and the people can kind of come in and out based on what their needs or preferences are.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how challenging is the process of making sure that those rooms are consistently filled for the business, and that the individual practitioners are kind of also getting what they need out of it?
Right. So we present to if we just talk about RMTs, because we have several departments within
Yep.
Grant Wellness,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
RMTs, we basically say we have a morning shift,
Uh-huh.
morning day shift, and then we have that afternoon evening shift. So
Yeah.
um We do try to negotiate upon the initial meeting with them,
Mhm.
and we want them to do a variety.
Okay.
But there's no open hours that are just losing income, right? There's
Yeah, yeah,
gotta,
yeah, yeah.
it's, yeah.
So when
So,
they show up, you make an agreement with them. It's like Monday, your morning,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Morning, afternoon. Tuesday, your evening, like, or afternoon, evening, whatever, however you term it. So you figure that out, and you're looking at what you've got slotted in. So kind of what's available. It's like
that's
you
right.
can do this, 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 and this. You want to do
Yeah,
it? Right? Is that reasonable?
yeah, and we're nice. We say, what's
Yeah.
your ideal? Here's our needs. Let's try
Yeah.
to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yes. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Because you are now, are you looking at any room on a particular metric? Like, if I've got a room, I expect that room to bring me this much per day, this much per hour. Do you have a metric like that that you use?
Yeah, yeah, we
Okay.
will look, but then again, because we have a variety of different types of
Yep.
therapists,
Yep.
we know that each industry brings in a different amount. So
Yes.
it's more like, what do we need per week? What do we need per day? If we need to, we
Okay.
can break it down per room.
Okay.
You can
So
break it
you,
down per hour.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you say more so your metric is dollars per larger time scale, like you say, per week or per month, and
Mhm.
you'll kind of pick and play with varying services and varying rooms to the point where you're pretty certain you're going to hit that, and the only thing other than that would happen is you'd make more. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So like you target a floor of income.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. And the reason I'm asking some of these questions is because I'm sure that there are people over time who will engage with an interview like this that are trying to figure it out. And then what they'll do is they'll go looking around because they don't know where to look. They'll pay some business coach, and the business coach will sell them a program that isn't necessarily unique to their needs. It's just a program that they sell everybody. And then it's like, oh, this is how you figure it out. You reverse engineer. You did, you got a room. It's this many square feet. It's this, and you do the formula.
Mhm.
Whereas if you consider yourself as an individual, it's like, okay, what do I actually need? Right? Like, do I need to know how much I'm going to make a month? Or do I
Mhm.
need to know, or do I need to maximize every time unit? Because if you maximize every time unit, yeah, you're going to make more,
Mhm.
but you might also be really stressed and annoyed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The interactions that I've had with you so far gives me no indication that you would be anything other than positive and nice to anybody who showed up.
Right.
So,
That's the goal.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
would assume that on initial meetings or discussions for employment, you're not trying to drive any deals. You're just saying, hey, this is what we need.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're looking for, and if we can meet, we'll meet.
That's right. And
Right.
then I guess as clinic owners in the background, we are always researching what is that industry, like whoever we're looking at hiring, whatever candidate comes in, what is that industry paying for that profession?
Yeah.
Or if we talk about massage therapy or osteo, what is the current split?
Yeah.
What, that kind of thing, so
Yeah.
that we aren't way out of the ballpark on,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
The superficial understanding that I've always held is that your standard split for an RMT, at least in Ontario, if the clinic is providing reception, providing patient flow, I mean, not necessarily going really far out of their way, but then also providing laundry, it's a 60-40 split most of the time. Is that what you understand the standard to be?
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Um,
with respect to osteo, because you don't need to change the sheets on the table, you just need to clean the table. And reception is still doing that job. Usually you're looking at a 70-30 in most cases.
yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then, if you're a little generous, or if somebody tries to barter with you, you'll see some 75-25, some 80-20s.
Right.
Have you come across the sliding, or the decreasing splits at certain dollar figures? So it's like if the practitioner gets to this dollar figure, you drop the percentage. Have you seen those?
I've seen other clinic owners
Yeah, yeah.
do that and
Yep.
show me that and say,
Mhm.
this is what I do.
Yep.
And so we actually put something similar into place, but that was with the goal of contractor retention.
Yep.
because if
Mhm.
we just talk about today's economy, let's just
Yeah.
call it an employee world. Lots
Yeah.
of jobs out there, lots of choice. So
Okay.
what we found works, which we are so happy, is you start at a probationary period.
Uh-huh.
Ours is 6 months because we feel like people really settle in around month 5 and you really get to see their true nature.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Honestly, okay, not 3 months, and then we start them at a certain point and then they
Uh-huh.
go up
Uh-huh.
if they're re-signed after the probationary
Okay.
period,
Okay.
and then we meet them annually after that. And then we do have, if they've been with us for 3 years, they'll go up again.
Okay.
They'll get like a flex health account or expense account, and that
Okay.
increases the longer they're with us, in a
Okay.
nutshell.
So you do have access to a group benefit plan.
No, not any official benefits. We
Okay.
just
So
allow an
within the clinic.
expense account just within the clinic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
to as an employer to purchase a group plan is really cost intensive. I don't know if you've ever looked at them.
I've looked at it several times, hoping that something would make sense, but
No.
no.
I think the lowest you're going to see per plan member is like $300 a month.
And that's with them paying some of it. Like it's
Yeah. Well,
absolutely, yeah,
so it's a lot of money, and if they used all their benefits, it gets more expensive next year.
right.
So it's, unless you're a gigantic corporation, it's actually not that smart. So you have healthcare services within your clinic, and then you generate an opportunity for people to more or less exchange without having to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, and just it's a wellness. So if they
Yeah.
submit the receipts and we agree, and it could be you take a yoga class,
Uh-huh.
you go see an osteopath, you
Uh-huh.
whatever that is,
Uh-huh.
and then we reimburse, right? And that gives
Okay.
a little more freedom
Mhm.
for them to choose what they want to do for their wellness.
Okay.
And that isn't an effort on our part for them to stay, just to keep
Yeah.
it simple. Like,
Within the world of clinic ownership, is that something that you've come across that is even mildly common?
I don't think so. We
Okay.
haven't heard
Okay.
much,
Okay.
unless they're a franchise
Yeah,
that
sure.
has
Sure.
actual benefits. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
at that point, you have so much broad income into the corporation that you're in a different position, and you're
Yeah.
a larger client. Your, say, per member cost would change in the direction that everybody would like. Because
Yeah.
there's more stuff going on.
Yeah.
Okay. How has that approach, that initial understanding that we're going to, as a clinic, do things that are in the favor of the contractor over time at delineated times. It's like, at this time this will happen. At this time this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
What has that seemed to do in your experience as a clinic owner with respect to practitioner retention over time?
Yeah. It's all been positive.
Okay.
It's like they know where they're headed.
Yeah.
There's no awkward meeting with negotiating,
Yeah.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
know what's coming.
Mhm.
And I think that was a huge change for us in maintaining longevity in a
Okay.
staff member.
Okay. Now, awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. And because I'd never asked you any of these questions prior under
Right.
any circumstance. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm actually really interested. Now, as far as I'm aware, you do, as a clinic owner, also set up varying continuing education opportunities where people come into the clinic to offer the class to your employees. Now, your employees would then pay out of pocket. Is that fair?
Yes. So we have
Okay.
contractors and we have employees. So it just
So,
depends.
yeah.
Some are
I'm
on the
sorry.
clock taking the course and some are purchasing the course.
Okay.
Depends if they're independent or not. Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
either way, you've done something where, instead of the people that are working within your business having to go out of their way, it's kind of brought to them, at least as an opportunity.
Yeah, we have a large staff.
Yep.
So most trainers are willing to come to our
Okay.
location.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And when did you start doing that in the 2016 area? Did you start doing that more recently?
Like to bring somebody in.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometime probably, yeah, sometime between 2014 and 16, we
Okay.
started bringing people in. My
Nice.
business partner and I used to teach certain modalities, but
Sure.
honestly, we're just too busy
Yeah, that's fair.
anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The So, and how has that gone, say, as far as frequency and the feedback from the educators?
It's gone great. Like they often, some will contact us again and ask if there's a fresh group, can I come back?
Yeah.
Usually we reach out to them.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, sometimes we will take a smaller group to a trainer. Just depends
Mhm.
on what
Yep.
in what departments and what they're learning.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what you say departments, what are the departments? So I'm assuming RMT is one department.
Yeah, so we have the registered massage therapy, and then we have the wellness practitioners. So those would be not that they're not regulated, but
Yeah. Yes.
things like we have acupuncture,
Uh-huh.
the reflexologist,
Yeah.
um, uh, some of them just do relaxation massage, body
Uh-huh.
treatments.
Yeah.
We have estheticians. We have a nurse
Okay.
that does medical aesthetics and medical injections.
Yeah. Right on.
We have a full yoga studio.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so there's a variety. There's even a cleaning crew, right? Because the place
Yep.
is not small.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds correct
yeah,
based on what you're
yeah,
telling me. If you have six
yeah,
rooms and 9 rooms and a yoga studio, I'm
yeah.
assuming the 6 rooms downstairs is where the yoga studio is.
No, the yoga studio is on the second level.
Oh,
Yeah,
so the second level
yeah.
is gigantic.
Yeah, the place is about 11,000 square feet. So it's a big,
Okay.
big place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, aside from those, you have other rooms. So if I remember properly, you have a salt cave.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so that's more of the spa service. Is that fair?
Yeah. For wellness and
Uh-huh.
respiratory,
Okay.
prevention of respiratory issues.
Do
Yeah.
you find that there is a population that approaches the salt cave more from particular areas of the world, like where their family originated, or do you just notice that? And the only reason I ask is because the manner in which I've been introduced to it, it seems to be something that has occurred in different countries for a longer period of time, so they tend to be more interested in it.
Mm.
Versus in your situation, is it just it kind of doesn't matter? People who like it show up.
At first, when we first opened, which at that location was, like I said, at the end of 2014, it was
Yep.
like a wow, any local people, some of them hadn't even heard of it.
Hmm.
We had, I think, 350 people to show up, at our soft opening to see this thing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
because I
Okay.
think it was the second cave in Ontario that was built. But I
Yep.
think I know where you're going with that. If we consider that the salt either comes from the caves underneath Poland or the caves from the Himalayan mountains,
Hmm.
a lot of people from Europe and or Asia will be
Yep.
well aware, and it's like, oh
Yep.
yes, I've been in one of these
Okay.
before. Right.
Well, it's generally speaking, what I've seen is there's a greater understanding from Eastern European populations, but I didn't
Yes.
necessarily
Yeah.
know that it was a thing that was present in some of the Asian countries as well. Like I didn't know that,
I think
but
most of the salt comes from the Himalayas. Yeah. Yeah.
I heard a very interesting person. People who aren't from a particular area can very easily be sold on something from another area
That's
because
right.
it's exotic. So,
Yeah.
as a joke, as a complete joke, somebody was talking about Himalayan sea salt, and it's like, I bet you the way that they make it is they send it to a monastery and the monks pee in it as a joke.
Right.
Like, the
Yeah.
it's how do you know that it's from there? How do
That's
you
right.
know that it's the quality? Like, do you send
Yeah.
it to a lab? What are we really saying? And I only note that because there's this concept that so some people will put it on as like kind of an exoticism, but also there are certain areas in the world where you're more likely to see a different concentration of particular minerals in the rocks.
Yeah.
So that as something like salt forms, it would ideally crystallize into that. And you then say, oh, those minerals in particular do these things. It's like, yeah, but how do you know that that percentage of minerals is in that grain of salt?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's just me being Science Sam and, you
Yeah.
know,
That's
possibly
right.
being a little bit overly critical. But the there at least seems to be a positive experience from something like that, especially if you put some effort into taking care of the place.
Right.
Which
Absolutely.
I'm guessing you do.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, you're not gonna say it.
That's right.
Yeah,
We definitely.
I've heard some things about like float tanks, and
Right. Yeah, we
say
don't have those.
you do have float tanks?
We do not,
You
no.
don't, okay, because say the regularity of certain things. So if it's a good high quality float tank, there's a really robust cleaning and filtering mechanism, but there's probably some general upkeep that needs to be done for that, and maybe
Right.
it's not done as much, right? So it's like, I don't know if I want to float in your soup.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
That's why it's nice that the health unit shows up unannounced and checks on people.
this is good. Okay,
Right.
so this is a thing. Okay, I'm glad to
Yes.
hear that.
Yes.
And I'm positive you've never had issues with the health unit.
No, they like us. We call them and ask questions. So they don't have to,
Yeah,
ask
right
us
on.
questions. It's all
Okay,
there.
so
Yeah.
you've got a yoga studio, you've got the salt cave. Are there any other services that sort of run themselves?
Mm-hmm. So we call them hydrotherapy services, or you could say a non-practitioner service,
Yeah,
right? If
yeah,
you're
okay,
looking
yeah.
at it economically.
Mhm.
We have our soaks, right? So we have a room where our signature service is the beer baths. We do but we have mineral salt soaks, essential oil, whatever the seasonal soak may be.
Yeah, yeah. The
Two
pumpkin
cedar
spice soak?
tubs. What's that?
A pumpkin spice soak?
That's going on right now. I think it may be a pumpkin latte chai, something. Yeah.
Okay, right on.
But
Okay.
right.
Yep.
And so there's a soak room, and of course rustic cedar tubs, the whole deal.
Okay.
That would be served with a pint of our local cream ale or local wine,
Okay.
all for detox, right? And only one. And then there's
It's a
a
liver
foot
tonic.
detox room. Yeah. Foot detox and infrared sauna. So
Okay.
those are 4 separate services that don't involve a specific practitioner.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and those types of services, and this is kind of on the business side, those types of services allow for the opportunity to make income without, say, with less overhead on a day-to-day basis. So it's like once you've covered the cost of creating them and
Mhm.
whatever it costs to maintain them, then it's more profit over top of it if you put it on the right kind of balance sheet, right? So then you have to make sure that there's somebody there to make sure that these things aren't falling apart. But for the most part, the services run themselves. As you note, your category would be non-practitioner service. Now, as on the business side, do those do fairly well for you?
They're constant. Certain seasons, certain services are busier, right?
Okay.
So, but of course, looking at it from an entrepreneurial point of view, we have to forecast, and then of course you try to offer a deal or whatnot, trying to get people to encourage them to do that alongside a massage or alongside another service. Yeah.
Well, if you have something that's a non-practitioner service, if it's not, one of the challenges would be that if you're not having money go through it, it doesn't pay for itself. So then it becomes a loser, like an economic loser. So it's not that it's like, a loser and it's, I should make fun of it. It's more so that if it's not sustaining itself, you've got to make a choice.
That's right.
So, okay. Huh. Okay. But more or less, you can figure out the ebb and flow well enough that it's a net benefit to the business.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, good. So we have a general idea of how long you've been doing stuff and that you are quite organized in how you're approaching the clinic, and you've gone out of your way to make sure that the people who are working within the business know the progression levels and they feel valued, and you're providing them with just a positive experience. Say, compared to other clinic owners that are your turnover rates similar? Are your turnover rates, say, like, there's 2 ways I want to say it, like better or lower?
I think ours are lower with practitioners. We're coming out of a very hard time, but I'm going to pull in the old pandemic and the closures. We were closed 4 times
Yeah. Oh.
with support staff. And I say that, I mean our reception,
Yeah.
our clinical assistants,
Uh-huh.
at one point, even cleaning staff. Those were those industries are that were really, really hard to,
Okay.
for us to retain, just
Okay.
retention.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So,
And you generally approach those positions with a similar outlook as far as let's make it valuable for everybody on
that's right.
either side. Okay. Okay. This is
Yeah.
good. These are good things. Okay. So the retention, yeah, that's most of what I was really interested in. We touched on something prior to hitting record, the concept of attempting to identify or help somebody identify whether or not they're the person who should be working in somebody else's clinic, running their own thing on their own, or running a clinic.
Yes.
Is there some insight you can give into say the motivations? Because obviously whether you knew it or not, you're the person who should be running the clinic because you're making positive choices. It's very obvious that you're
Right.
making positive choices all around to try to make the business robust and the work experience positive. And as the clinic co-owner, we touched on this, you can kind of look when somebody shows up at their personality characteristics and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing that form of, say, business setup. Is there anything you can talk about there that you think is useful?
Yes, I think some people know themselves and some people need to get to know themselves as a professional, right?
Sure.
So we may have someone start off and think, this is what I want. I just want to show up, do my job, like give you my hours, my pay, clean the place for me. I get to go home. But that's great. That's the ideal person you want to have working at a group clinic. They want most of it done for them. Show up, be great with the clients, and go home. However, some of them discover upon working in that environment, they'll get some resistance from us because now they're really wanting to control their schedule beyond the agreed upon hours, or they want to do it their way, or not that we don't meet people halfway, but you know what I mean? Like just very different from the team. They will stick out like a sore thumb pretty quickly from the team. And nothing wrong with that, but more just, okay, this person either needs to be running their own show or just working from their home, or some people think they want to be work in a group, but then once they're integrated, it's like, maybe.
So I think, is it fair to say that what you notice is the person who integrates better into the group versus the person who probably functions better on their own? That's kind of the distinction you would see.
You can definitely see that distinction, and pretty quickly.
Now, would you say, based on what you've seen, that the person who integrates relatively well into the group, but also wants, say, a little bit more autonomy, or maybe a little bit more control over how things run, would that maybe make the person a little bit better a candidate to run a multidisciplinary clinic?
Definitely. And depending on what their goals are, maybe they just want, in our case, to be in charge of a team, or to be appointed a key person, a manager, a team lead, whereas others are like, someday I'm doing this.
So the person, or say the traits, collection of characteristics that make somebody, say, want control, but they don't integrate into the team, they might look at it and think, I want to own a clinic like this. But would you predict that they'll probably be a bad fit for owning a clinic with a team?
Again, that's such I think that's all personality. I don't even, and I think, because they could have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have that personability, that the people skills, that good luck running a team, right? Because if you're not a good communicator, it might be best that you just communicate yourself as the practitioner with your client one-on-one.
So maybe if we were to set up some categories, we could set up like a control category, like how much control do you want to have? right? A category of how well do you integrate with a group, and then so like it's those two categories, and then maybe they balance out in a particular way where it's like you want some control, but you also, and maybe like an offloading of particular forms of labor, right? Like how much control do you want to have? How much labor do you want to do versus do you want others to do? So that's the labor category, they're offloading. And then the integration to a team, right? So if you have those three categories, you can kind of maybe try to map something out where it's like, okay, you want lots of control and you don't play nice with others. Go on your own, right? Find a room that's a good rate, run it exactly how you want, do a fantastic job. Perfect. If you want some control and you work well with others, maybe, but you want a high offloading of labor, right? If you want a high offloading of labor, maybe you should work in a team setting and get to the spot where maybe you're in control of a team if the clinic has that set up. That okay. And then it's like if you are okay with less offloading of labor, maybe doing more of the labor, you want some control and you work nice with others, maybe you're the multidisciplinary clinic owner.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
To help someone carve out the type of clinical setting that they could see themselves working in.
But I appreciate your insight into some people just don't know, so they go experience it one way and then they can make a choice.
That's right.
I like that in the discussion we've been able to kind of set up some three categories. I don't necessarily know how you'd go, or I would, or anybody would go about mapping that out immediately, but at least it's a starting point. I'm sure there's some tools out there that are stuck in the back of an academic textbook that I don't know about, but yeah, that's an interesting set of things. So it's kind of like how much labor, like labor offloading, personality characteristic, like how much control you want to have and how well you play with others.
That's right.
Okay, fair enough.
And even the control, the type of clientele that you want, or that you want to work with. Yeah.
Okay. These are all good things. So what I'm going to do, I think that's a decent point to at least end this conversation. I would be very, very happy to have other conversations that we record in the future, and maybe talk about more story type things, right? Because I think those are valuable as well. You have a good amount of experience in varying roles, so I'm sure you have some interesting stories that could help people as well as be funny.
Right. So we don't want to scare people away. No.
Sometimes you should. So like sometimes it's not even scaring them away, it's giving them the information that would let them make the choice.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a way to be malicious with it, and a way to be educational, I guess. Okay.
That's right.
So I'm going to stop the recording, but stay online so I can say goodbye and thank you appropriately. So thank you everybody for watching and listening, or listening, whatever the heck you're doing. And we will talk to you again soon.